name's Kim.
Hi, I'm Natalie.
Hello, I'm Claire.
And for our video, we're going to talk to you about fractions.
So what is a fraction? A fraction is a part of a whole that has been divided up equally.
So a fraction is made up of two different parts. The first part is the numerator. And the second part is the denominator. So the denominator tells you how many parts make up a whole, and the numerator tells you how many parts you're counting.
This here is a proper fraction. An improper fraction is when the numerator, which is the number on the top, is greater than the denominator and looks like this. A mixed fraction is when there is a whole number and a fraction. So it might look like this. Our first activity is aimed at grade 3s who are first being introduced to fractions. It allows us to model how to halve, quarter and third different concrete materials. The Oswald's length is this one here. So level 3, model and represent unit fractions including half, quarter and third and fifth and their multiples to a complete whole.
In this activity, we want to model to the students using concrete materials what halves, quarters and thirds look like. For this activity, we would take a block of chocolate or other concrete material that can be equally divided and ask the students, how many do we have?
1 block.
If I were to break it, how many pieces would we have now?
2.
But how many blocks of chocolate do we have?
1.
So this models to the students that halves are part of one whole rather than two separate entities. What happens if I were to break it like this? How many parts do we have?
4.
But how many blocks of chocolate do we have?
Still 1.
So that represents to the students that there are 4 quarters in a whole, but also 4 quarters, they're parts rather than single entities. So to demonstrate 1/3 or thirds, I would break the chocolate like this and then continue with the line of questioning, how many pieces do we have?
3.
And how many blocks of chocolate do we have?
1.
That shows the students once again that we have 3 parts of one whole. If I were to take one of these away, how many pieces do we have here?
2.
So we have 2 parts of one whole block of chocolate. And this can be demonstrated using chocolate or other concrete materials like MAB that the students can move around with.
This theorist believes that some students have difficulties understanding that fractions are parts of a whole. Some students may also think that the following represents thirds, for example, because there are 3 parts, but they are not all equal. So it's important for students to also know that fractions are all equal parts of a whole.
Once the teacher has modelled fractions using the block of chocolates, the students can then return to their desks to manipulate their own concrete materials. For an extension activity, the teacher can split the class into groups and they can be given a group of Smarties or other materials to make into fractions. For this game, the teacher can call out a fraction and it's a race to see which group can complete their fraction using their concrete materials. Quarters.
In order to make quarters, we have to count the Smarties out into 4 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is also important that these groups are equal. So we keep going until there are no Smarties left. Here we have 4 quarters.
For our activity, we've used Smarties for the students to separate out their desks to create their fractions. However, a lot of schools have restrictions on things that you can use in the classroom. Some schools require that any food items brought into the classroom be individually wrapped. In that case, things like Crispelos or Hershey's Kisses can be used to replace the Smarties. Other schools also have restrictions on food in general. No food can be brought into the classroom due to allergies or sugar restrictions. And in this case, things like paddle pop sticks can be used to replace the Smarties, or equal-sized marbles, or even for the early years, small toys like dinosaurs or teddy bears can be used, like in the early years numeracy interview.
This second activity is a game of fraction memory. It includes various cards with fractions written on them in various forms. This one here is the symbolic representation of a fraction. Here we have the worded representation of a fraction, and here we have a model of 1/8. These cards will be placed face down on the tables, and students will have to pick up 2 cards and then find which ones are matching. Students take it in turn to do this. The person at the end of the game with the most pairs of cards is the winner. There is also a trick to the game. Here we have 1/8 and here we have 2/16. These fractions are equivalent, therefore if the student picks up these 2 cards together and realises that they're equivalent, they can keep this pair. This activity of fraction memory relates to level 4 of AusVals, as it is aimed at students who are about a grade 4 level. So here, this AusVals link is investigating equivalent fractions used in context.
So the key ideas with fraction memory is that we're learning about equivalent fractions, and also it links to the Booker model, which highlights the importance of using language, symbols and models. So here we have the symbols, here we have some language, and here we have the model.
Now we're going to play a game to show you how the students will be playing this in the classroom.
So I'm going to pick up 1 card, and on my card I have a model of 2 quarters, and I've picked up 1/2. As you can see, these are equivalent fractions, so I pop this down in my pile.
So I'm going to pick up, I've got 8/12s and 1/8. As you can see, these don't match, and therefore I can't keep them. I have to pop them back.
I'm going to choose this card, which is 1/8. Now I have to use my memory because I can recall that somebody else picked up the 1/8 card before. Now to remember where it was. I think it might have been this one. So I found the worded representation of 1/8. These 2 match, so I can pop them in my pile.
And the students will continue in this manner until all the cards have been picked up, and then the student who has the most pairs at the end of the game wins.
For the fraction memory game, some ideas for differentiation is for students who are having some difficulties with fractions, try maybe to stick with only using proper fractions. For students who need a bit more of a challenge, or incorporate improper and mixed fractions and harder fractions at that. To sort of identify and to help with any misconceptions, a fraction wall might be a good idea to help students figure out which fractions are actually equivalent.
The idea we've chosen is for grade 5s and grade 6s who might need more extension with fractions. And our AusVal links are count by quarters and halves and thirds, including with mixed numerals, locate and represent these fractions on a number line. So we're going to work with a number line activity. And we've also got another AusVal link, which is compare and order unit fractions and locate and represent them on a number line. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to put them on a number line.
For this activity, students are going to take it in turns to take a card with a fraction on it and place it on the number line, like so.
So on the cards, there are proper fractions, improper fractions, and mixed fractions. And each student will take a turn to put a fraction on the number line.
Claire, if you'd like to put it on the number line.
So that's 4/3, and I'll pop that about 1/3 space after the 1.
The fraction that I'm going to place on the number line is 1/2. Now some students may believe that 1/2 is actually smaller than 1/4 because 4, which is the denominator in 1/4, is a bigger number than 2. However, because the denominator is bigger, this actually means the number is smaller because it means the whole is broken up into more parts and we only have one of those parts. So I'm going to place 1/2 closer to 1 as it is bigger than 1/4.
My number is 1 whole and 1/8. And so I'm going to put this number 1/8 past 1 whole. So we've got the 1 whole and then the 1/8.
card that I'm going to do is 3/3. And as we know, 3/3 is equal to 1 whole. So I'm just going to place that over the 1.
And our last number for today's activity is 5/6. So this is going to go right here, because it's almost 1 whole, but it's 1/6 short. If you were doing this in a class, you would have a lot more cards and a lot more variety of different numbers for the students to place up on the number line. So an activity like this is really great for visual learners or tactile learners, as they're able to physically take the fractions and put them in a number line and see the differences in the fractions. However, a lot of students are still going to need further structure and scaffolding in this subject. So that's where something like a fraction wall can be used in the class to help students place the numbers on a number line and to understand the differences in the different fractions.
To extend this activity for students who need more of a challenge, we could always make a bigger number line, so with more whole numbers. Continuing to use improper and mixed fractions as well, and they can complete this individually at their desks. So that concludes our 3 activities for teaching common fractions.
These are just some of the activities that you can use to teach fractions, and they can be adapted for almost any year level, because as students can be introduced to fractions as early as grade 2 and continue to learn them throughout their schooling career.
We hope you enjoyed our video.